Welcome back to another Wayno's Photos video. And it's a bit of a sad story today because I went to jump on my Fonda-esque bike and on the way just out of my home up a little hill, I changed it into the small ring, and then there felt like there was a lump in the ring, it was like if there was a stone in it or something. And then the next thing I know, the actual ring broke into two pieces. So I walked it back to home and then started to investigate. So let's roll that intro and let's actually look what failed and what was the possible cause and what I'm going to do to fix it. Well, the first thing I noticed was that when I actually pulled the biggest section off the actual ring, that all of the bolts were missing, all the bolt heads were missing. And my first assumption was that they sheared off, because this is actually a fault that you can have on chain rings. But then on further investigation, I actually found that the actual screws somehow had basically come loose and worked their way out, or damaged the actual aluminium inserts and then fell out. So I only had one bolt holding on the chain ring, and obviously that's why it cracked and it broke. So yeah, not good news. And the other thing that happened as well is in the course of doing that, it actually damaged the carbon shroud on the derailleur. So I've got a derailleur repair and I've also lost a chain ring. And then when I looked a little bit closer and I started to investigate in the actual screw holes, they actually don't look in pretty good condition. It looks like the thread's been damaged, and I don't know if I can even get some bolts to start in there, because there's only a couple of turns of threads that are on those bolts that actually fit into the actual housing of the actual crankset. So it's a bit of a dilemma. And the other thing that was a bit nasty, because the actual chain ring had broke into two pieces, it swung around and it's actually damaged the area around my bottom bracket and scratched the paint. So there's a fair bit of damage, and it's a bit of tears were shed, unfortunately. So after looking at this damage, I've got a few options to try. Now, the first thing I could try is to actually get a new 32 tooth chain ring and see if I can get some longer bolts and see if I can get the bolts to start and hold into the chain or the crankset. So, and put some Loctite on it, hold them in place, and see if that's going to work. So that'd probably be the cheapest option, and I'd have to order a 32 chain ring. I've already spoken to my bike shop, because obviously these cranksets, they've only just come out in the 12 speed, and there's probably not that many around. So it'd probably be a wait and see for that to rock up. Now, the other option I've got is I could actually buy the whole new crankset, because then I would get a whole new thread, and the part where the screws go in will actually be new again. But they're not exactly cheap, those cranksets. I think they're about $600 or $700 Aussie. So that's a bit of an outlay. And my third option is I actually have one of the old 11-speed record cranksets, but obviously it hasn't got as lower gearing, and I can actually put that on the bike and get the bike going, and then basically retire this piece of equipment off the bike. And so I've got to really scratch my head and have a little bit of a think about it, what I'm going to do. Obviously, the cheapest option will probably just changing out the crankset for the old one. But I do like the lower ratios on the bikes, and if you haven't seen some of my older videos, I actually talk about that a lot, and it just makes it a lot easier when you're just commuting every day, and if you just want to sort of pace yourself up a hill and you don't want to push too hard, you've always got those extra gears in reserve. So it's nice to have that. And also when I go overseas, when I go to Thailand and there's some seriously big hills, those lower gears really come in handy. So I'm going to have a bit of a think, and I'll get back to you with the next video, and I'll let you know how that works out and what I decide to do, and if we could actually get the parts from Campagnolo. And probably there is a little bit of a weakness in this design, because the actual chain ring is actually very, very small. There's a very small amount of meat between the tooth and actually the mount point. So you've got a very, very thin chain ring in the vertical profile. So anyway, guys, that's where I'm going to leave it. Thanks for popping in, and I'll keep you updated. Cheers.